Hey everyone, my name is Josh Bauer and welcome back to Son of a Bowhunter, and I think it's time to make some arrows. So if you think of an arrow kind of like the bullet flying out of your rifle, they get more accurate if you hand load your own loads for your rifle. So that's what we're doing here today. My buddy Clint just picked up some new arrows. They're Easton Axis FMJs, and it's the anniversary edition. They're orange. He decided to go with a 4-fletch, knock-on wrap, and knock-on vanes. He also went and did the 75 grain half out as his frontal weight with a 100 grain point. So when you're starting to look into building your own arrows, the first thing you want to think of is, well, what do I want the arrow for? Do I want it for whitetail? Do I want it for elk? Do I just want an all-around arrow that I can shoot at pretty much anything? Well, that's kind of what Clint did. So if you go into podiumarchery.com, they actually have an F.O.C chart. And if you watch any of his videos, and I highly recommend to go over to podiumarchery.com or their YouTube channel and actually watch the videos that he puts out. So what you're trying to do is, get a front of center anywhere from, I want to say 12% to 15%. So how this actually mapped out, I weighed the arrow and the components individually on the app. If you log into the app, it breaks it down. How much does your knock weigh? How much does your half out or insert weigh? What's the grain per inch of the arrow? How long is the arrow? So Clint has a pretty short draw. So with his draw length and the arrow, and then accounting for the half out, which I highly recommend you do account for the half out, he's running like a 26-inch arrow. And that would be from the yoke of the knock to the end of the half out. Not counting, obviously how long the point's going to be. So all that being said, he's running a 515 grain arrow, and he is shooting that with a 65-pound bow. Now you also, when you buy your arrow, you got to look into how much weight you want up front to get your F.O.C, and that's what this this website that Podium Archery actually have. It helps you figure out exactly to the T of what do you need to get between that 12% to the 50%. If you go over a little bit in your 16-17%, I think it's actually a little bit better. It helps your arrow a lot more downrange, and it helps that penetration. You can actually go into Ranch Fairy and he'll say shoot a 20% F.O.C front arrow and you'll blow through anything. But right now we're shooting for 15. So with the 515 grain arrow that Clint chose, I'll give you a better look at that right here. The vanes he chose, he tried the OD green and the orange to match the shaft, and the half out. 515 grain. So that being said, from the knock to the vanes to the wrap to the half out, this arrow is 14.8%. So you can call this a 15%, almost on the money, hand load arrow. So for the next part of the video, what you're going to do before obviously you get the finished product, and that's what we showed you first. Just wanted to go through a little bit of where you can find the information so you can build the perfect arrow for whatever style hunt you want to do. So for the next point of it is how to build it. And now we know what arrow we want, and we showed you one of them, but we're going to go through how we made these arrows. So pretty much what we did, now we have just the shaft. So we went, measure Clint's arrow, along with checking the spine chart, along with how much point weight Clint's going to shoot, and obviously how much the outsert or half out weighs. So we cut them down, squared up the ends, clean it out with high grade alcohol that you can get at any archery pro shop. You can get at Cabela's, or you can just go down to your local drugstore like CVS and get alcohol, and get Q-tips to clean inside. So we cut them down, we glued them, we spin test each arrow to make sure the half out and everything was good with the arrow. So these all are 100% hand load, so they all spun perfectly. When we were using the 2-part epoxy, and I highly recommend a 2-part epoxy, and the one that we like to use would be Gorilla Glue, and you can find this at any local hardware store or even on Amazon. Glued all the half outs in. Like I said, we spin test each arrow to make sure everything was balanced, everything was good. We pulled the nocks out and we left these sit overnight. Then what we went into was we clean, obviously, your outside of your shaft where you want to put the wrap on. You don't need to have a wrap on it. I think it's nicer when, if you ruin a vein or a vein comes off, you can easily remove the wrap, and it gives you a clean surface to re-alcohol and start from scratch again. So that's where we're at right now. So we're going to go through, putting the veins on, showing you some of the equipment that we use. So for the next part of the video, you won't see me, you'll just see my hands and where I'm working. Alright guys, so for the next part of the video, you're just going to see my hands, but what I'm trying to show you is the equipment we are using and stuff that you can buy, and you can do this all at home. You don't have to pay a pro shop to do this, and to be honest with you, no one's going to care more about your arrows than either your best friend or yourself. So that's why we're doing this all ourselves. So pretty much what Clint went and picked up was normal super glue. You can find this on pretty much any pro shop's website. He went with knock on because he bought the veins that were knock on, and he bought the arrow wrap. So you can see that's what he got. So that's what we're using. So first up, obviously we have our arrow jig, and it's already set up for a 4-fletch, and we're doing a 2-degree offset. So I know a lot of people are pretty particular, and Clint is one of them. So you can see how I line the knock up with the arrow wrap and how the arrow is balanced and spine aligned. So we're just going to put that in our jig, if I can get it in our jig. Usually most arrow rests have an indicator to show you exactly how to start each arrow. So what I'm going to do is, and I didn't tell you this in the beginning, each knock usually has a little tab, and it usually pokes out. I don't know if you can see that. So we're going to use that indicator, and we're going to face it up. So how we did Clint's other arrows was we're doing the first one orange, we're doing the next one green, orange, and green for our 4-fletch. So we're going to go with the one orange vein from knock on, and this is the PM33 max vein. It's a low profile vein, should work pretty good with broadheads, so it's good to hear. So got it on the clamp. We already pre-measured where he wanted the veins to be, so we're at setting 2, and make sure the back of the vein is at setting 2. We're going to use a primer pen. Now you don't need a specific brand of pen. It's all pretty much made of the same stuff. I had this one laying around. Every time you buy a bottle of glue, I buy a pen, so it is what we got at the moment. Just going to do 2 swipes, back and forth, just to make sure the adhesion on the arrow is good to the vein, and hopefully he won't have any veins pop off. Just going to put a bead of glue as best I can in the center of the vein, all the way down to the end. Go back and forth to make sure there's no air pockets or bubbles missing. Now what's nice about these clamps are they have a magnet, so you actually can put it on away from the arrow, line up with the back, and then what I like to do is have one hand up front, one hand in back, and push directly straight down. And some veins, like the orange, you can see if there's an air pocket. So I push down until I can't see any more air pockets of the bubbles, where we put the glue, and I'll hold it there for a couple seconds. And I'll let go. We'll give that a couple seconds, and then we'll move on to the next step. Alright guys, last but not least, and you're going to do this on every single arrow, so I highly recommend staying tuned and watching this little tech tip, and most of you guys probably already know this, but the guys that know this also do this every single time too. So you have your super glue or your pure adhesive, We glued each vein. Arrow's perfect. Now, the last thing you want to happen is when you shoot at a target, and if something with the adhesion, process that, you clip, just say a branch, and it peels your vein off. You don't want that. So I recommend getting this boning archery fletch tight. And what we're going to do is on the front of each individual vein, we're going to put a drop of glue, and we're going to put a drop of glue on the back of each vein. I'll show you that. So just got done gluing our last vein of our forefletch. So I'll try to do this in the camera. You want to be quick with it. Just a quick dab on the back of each vein where the vein meets the back of the shaft. So if you're in the woods or it gets snagged on something, or just at a 3D course, the vein will have, when it dries, because right now it's kind of like a thicker liquid, it's not like a super glue, but it'll take that transition from the wrap and make it smooth into the vein and around. So that's your tech tip. We got a lot more to go. We have 4 of these done. Stay with us. This is Clint's side of the arrows. Now we're going to go to mine. But right now we're going to finish his arrows, and I will be back to you as soon as possible, and we're going to do my arrows, and I'll show you what we're choosing for mine. Stay tuned. Please, if you like what you see so far, ring the bell. Hit a like. I appreciate it. Especially subscribe. I'm going to try to do a lot more of these videos, so stay tuned. Alright guys, now it's time for round 2. So we're building a different set of arrows today. This is actually from my personal setup. Don't have my new bow here at the time, but I do have an arrow that I shot through a similar bow last year that measures out at carbon to carbon, 28.5 inches, obviously with the titanium half out from Easton. So we're going to zip through these real quick. We're going to square them. Well, so first we're going to cut them. We're going to square them, and then we're going to glue them, and when the glue is still wet, we're going to spin test them and just make sure those arrows are spinning true. So stay tuned. Alright, so before we cut them, what we're going to do is spin test each arrow to see which end of the arrow has a wobble in it. Now these are 1,000 of an inch match grade Easton long range 250 spines, so they should be like glass, but it's always, do your due diligence and, check your arrows. So we're going to check these out on a spinner. I don't know if you can see the corner of my paper, but this one's spinning pretty good like glass. So we're going to put that one aside. We're going to go through the rest of them. Make sure you're not on the logo. That kind of throws off the that's like glass too. Yeah, I never had a problem with Easton. And I know in the last video that I was talking to you guys, I shouldn't say last video, it's in this video, I have this this arrow tuner over here. So pretty much what that does is it judges the spine. It also tells you where your spine is heavy on the one side, where they say they have a crease, or where the shaft comes together. I did a full metal jacket, and I did the arrows I'm shooting. I didn't get to do Clint's, but I used to use this for my recurve, because usually when you get cheaper arrows you have that problem. So I'll spin that over to this after I'm done spinning this, and I'll kind of zoom in. There we go. Now you can see right now I put these on, they're all 1/1000 of an inch. I don't really get too much jump with the Easton arrows like you would with other arrows. Like some arrows you have to spine align. I know I said that in the last video, and I don't think with Easton they use a woven pattern that goes through their whole shaft. So in my personal opinion, with broadheads and stuff like that, I never had a weak side or a soft side as they call it, or a heavy side. So I do spin test all my arrows just to make sure they're spinning true, which side to take the wobble out. but I never had spine problems. Now, I have a buddy coming over later on. He got the SS VAPS from Victory, and they have a spine line on the shaft. It shows you right where to put your nock and how to start tuning the arrow, which I heard is like 90% of the time. But we're going to test that out today on this video as well. So stay tuned. I'm going to finish these arrows up. I'm going to cut them, and just so everyone knows, and obviously everyone is probably more professional than I am, but when you cut arrows, your blade spinning, counterclockwise towards you, you actually want to spin your arrow against it and keep moving so you get that square cut. But we're still going to, put them on a square, and sand a little bit of the end off just to make sure they're true and they're square for the half out. So keep following along, and we'll get this process done, and hopefully you'll learn something today. So we just cut the arrows, we squared them with our Luminox square. And there's another tool I want to point out. Gotta get one of these EZ Q2 archery vein removers. They're pretty sharp, they got a U shape, and if you're into tinkering like I am, to change veins out and put new veins on, cleans the shaft up really well. So now we're just going through each arrow. We're not putting wraps on these arrows. I'm trying to get the most F.O.C I can. With this setup, with the Easton titanium half outs and the SK2 veins, we're looking at like a 510 grain arrow, which is a little lighter than I usually shoot. I'm usually like in the, I want to say the 540s. I wanted to lighten things up this year because I haven't really been having penetration problems. I actually shot a doe at 15 yards directly facing towards me, right between the shoulder blades, with the FMJ 4mm, which is actually a deep 6, and it went all the way through. It spined her, went down through all the good stuff, all the vitals, and she didn't move. It's like you shot her with a rifle. So I really don't have penetration problems, so I'm trying to get a little bit more speed out of my setup. So what we're doing now is we're just cleaning up the backs of the arrows, cleaning up the front. That being said, with the 510 grain with no wraps on the back and about a 6 grain nock, I think the veins and everything are only like about 15 grains. I'm looking at a total hour weight, like I said, of 510, but it's going to put me up at 18.82% F.O.C. So I'm excited to see how these things perform, with accuracy, and also, penetration, because everyone's chasing that, heavy front of center. If you ever watch Ranch Fairy, he's a big guy on it. So it's kind of like my first time trying the heavy F.O.C. So along with that F.O.C, how I'm getting there, along with the 55 grain insert, I'm shooting a 150 grain broadhead. So hopefully I'll make that guy proud, and hopefully we'll have some good footage when we shoot a deer this year, and you can come along and see how the penetration actually did, because I actually like trying stuff. I don't like taking people's word for it. I'm sure you guys don't either. So that's what we're going to do, and that's what we're trying today. Alright guys, so for the next step, what we're going to do is we're going to get our 2-part epoxy out. We're going to mix it up really good on a piece of plastic, and then we're going to coat just the back end knuckle of this half out titanium from Easton's 55 grain, and then we're going to slide in the shaft. We're going to clean it out around it, and then we're going to spin test it and make sure everyone is true. And then after that's all done, we're going to set them aside for 24 hours just so they can harden before we start fletching. So going to get some of this glue out, snap the top off. This is fresh. There we go. So now we're going to mix it thoroughly. I can actually show you down here with your 2-part epoxy. I just like using the back of this. Doesn't really matter. You're just going to mix it up really good. I highly recommend 2-part epoxy. It's a really good bond, and it's just like safety insurance than super glue. I feel like super glue, it gets dried, it gets hard too quick, and then if you hit something hard, it can break that bond. Where 2-part epoxy is kind of a little bit of a rubber substance, if you look at it that way. So it can take shocks, it can take hard hits. So now, just going to put a little bit on the back, just as so. Take our arrow, slide in, twirl it as we go around. our spinner up a little bit. Just going to clean a little bit of that back off, like so, and I'm going to spin it. I don't know if you can see this. Just going to spin it, make sure we're not on the logo. And that one's spinning with no wobble, really true. So I'm going to go through the next 5 of these, and then we'll meet up when all these are cured and dried, and then we'll go from there, and then we'll start fletching. So sorry it's a long process, sorry there's a bunch of steps you got to take, but if you want a perfectly hand load arrow that's going to perform for you for hunting or target, this is just what you got to do. Now, along with this video, you're probably thinking, well, I don't have my bow yet, so Josh, how are you going to know what how your arrow is clocking to actually tune an arrow? So I actually bought aftermarket strings from ABB. In the notes, you can actually do this when you order a string. So how I wanted my strings to be ordered, I got them in all flow orange, and I asked for a center serving in black, just so you can see where you're clipping your nock in. And also you can make it stand out with a flow orange, D-loop, flow green, however you want to do it. But I asked them directly, along with the center servers, if they could actually serve on my Matthews string that they made for me, that the arrow will actually clock to the left. So you can do that with any aftermarket string. Just make sure you put in the notes. They're always happy to help you out. Or there's some guys that want their arrow to clock to the right. 90% of your strings out there, even from factory, from Matthews, have I known in the past, they usually always clock left. So if you want your arrow to clock right, you can ask for that when you order a string. So that's a little tip. We're just actually waiting on these arrows to dry a little bit. I didn't actually know this until I actually read the package, but I'm using 5-minute 2-part epoxy, so these things should be set up in the next couple minutes, and then we can just start fletching and go from there. So our insert's just dried. I have an arrow set up in the fletching jigs. I actually just put one vein on just to see how it would sit on the shaft, because we were going from a 5mm, now we're going to a 4mm. So I'll show you how this looks so far here on the arrow jig. If I can zoom in for you. Alright, so just like the last arrow, we have our clamp. We're going on a number 2 setting. I'm going to put the back of that vein where it ends, right on the number 2. Just like so. We're going to use our primer pen. Just do 1 or 2 swipes. You don't have to go crazy with this. It's just to clean the surface. And then put an even little line of glue down the arrow, just like so. And then here's a little tip. Make sure you're in the next slot and it's locked. And we're just going to go directly on top with the magnet, and then we're going to push evenly as we go down onto the shaft. Just hold it there for a couple seconds. And then we'll just let it sit. We'll let it sit for about 10-15 seconds, let that one dry, and then pretty much we'll take the clamp off and we'll repeat the process. And then at the end, I'll show you the arrow, see what you think, and then my buddy Corey should be here in a few minutes, and then we'll start making some Easton stainless steel VAPs. I believe that's the arrow he got. He is 4mm too, so I already have the jig set up for that, and we can actually show you his arrow build. Alright guys, I want to see what you think. So we're not having any wraps on these arrows, so this is the SK2 4-fletch. Came out really well. Highly recommend when you're doing arrows, just food for thought. Keep a Q-tip handy, and when you're done gluing your veins, if you have a little bit too much glue, you can just swipe down the arrow and you actually can clean up those edges pretty nice. So next step we're going to do, like we did in the first video, just pretty much like an insurance policy on your veins. And I highly recommend doing this. Just put a dab on each end of the vein. I promise you it'll help you out in the long run. Just like so. This will make a smooth transition from your shaft to the vein, and if it gets caught on anything, just like that, I don't know if you can see that, you won't have any issues of your veins coming off. And that, another tech tip I want to tell you, if your wife has vases that you bought her flowers or anything in, so when you're doing this whole process, if you have one like with inserts in, like I have this one over here, I don't know if you can see it, have the shafts in there. I have another one sitting in the background where this arrow is done. It's going to go in there to dry. And you can just do more veins. You can do more arrows. So we're going to flesh the rest of the 5 of these up. Corey will be here, and then I'll show you his VAPs. So stay tuned. Let's keep going along on this arrow journey together. Alrighty guys, we'll flip that around a little bit. So I told you Corey was coming over, and he was going to bring his VAPs SS with stainless steel in them. And we can kind of see a difference between the full metal jacket and the VAP where they have the spine alignment. You can actually see, if I get you in closer here, it actually bounces more than the Easton long range, just like that, and also the full metal jacket. So you can see where those fibers on those arrows, actually when they come around and make a seam, will actually be the stiffest or weakest part of your arrow, depending on what you have it on the top or the bottom. So this is Corey. It is his day. We're going to do a 4-fletch with heat vanes from Bowhunting Archery, and we're also going to tune his bow in the process. So we're going to make 2 arrows, make sure he likes them, make sure they tune well through paper, and we're going to take his bow outside and shoot it a little bit later. So stay tuned and follow along. So Corey wants to know, what is better, having a wrap on the back or more kinetic energy? So right now, the way we sit with his setup on his new arrows, where we'd be around 480 grains, and we're at, here, you want to go with 100 grain or 125?
100 grain.
We go with just 100 grain and a 50%, or it's not 50%, 50 grain outsert. It drops down, sorry, we're at 463 grains and we're at 14.5% front of center. So where is everyone trying to shoot front of center? Everyone's trying to be around that 15%, but it's okay to go over the 15%. I've shot animals with 11% and had no issues. This is the new fad, so we're all trying this together. So what are you looking for?
A balance between kinetic energy, but do I go with the wrap giving me more weight of an arrow with less kinetic, or no wrap, which would give my front of center higher to have more kinetic energy?
My personal preference, I rather have more front of center
than arrow weight.
And arrow weight, just so you have the speed. They always say speed kills. I don't know if that's true or not. So I'd rather have a little bit more speed to have my pins closer together and have more F.O.C. up front, which you're already in a 460 grain arrow. It's not like you're shooting a 350 grain arrow, a target arrow, or an IBO arrow is what they call it. It's a mid-range hunting arrow. I'm hoping everyone agrees on that.
Sounds like a plan. Let's go with more kinetic over the weight.
So we're going to do no wrap. We're going to do 4-fletch just to start. We're going to cut these bad boys down to roughly 29 inches, and we'll meet you back here when we start gluing everything in and start testing Corey's setup. So before we cut the arrows, the next discussion for the first arrow setup you saw of Clint's and Corey's. Now they have the same front of center, but they're what? Almost, I want to say 80 grains difference. So what do you think would be better? The front of center is the same, but Corey's going to have more speed, Clint's going to have less speed, plus the poundage is different. So Clint's 65 pounds, you're 72 pounds. So what do you think will be the better arrow for hunting? I'm thinking the faster arrow with the same F.O.C. is going to have more punch, where his arrow is going a little bit slower, having the same F.O.C., but a heavier arrow
and a bigger shaft
and a little bit thicker of a shaft. His is a 5mm. These are 4mm. And if it hits, just say a shoulder blade, will it actually punch through it, or is it so slow where it's going to be like a Super Bowl? It's just going to bounce and stop. So that's another good discussion that I think everyone should think about before they're making their arrows. So get an F.O.C calculator, along with, like I said, the Podium Archery, one of their website is great because it shows you exactly how many grains per inch your arrow is going to be in theory, with actually cutting and messing one up, and then also giving you the front of center that you're trying to shoot for, or you want to give or take a little bit, whether you want 4 fletch, 3 fletch, a wrap, no wrap, you want a heavier outsert, a lighter outsert, whatever you want to do. So that is a discussion that you guys should think about when you're building arrows. So we got Corey's arrow cut, glued on Victory VAP arrows, or all of Victory's lineup. They do have a spine line, and there is a mark right here. I don't know if you guys can see that. So we move this knock that it's straight down the spine line. So now we're going to fletch it up. We're going to do orange, yellow with no wrap. So that's what we're going to do now. So just like the last 2 parts of this video, we're going to fletch this up. I won't show you all that detail, and then we're going to go straight to paper tuning. Alright, Corey's setup is done. He went with the 4 fletch as well. With his half out, so now we just gotta let it set up, and then we are ready to paper tune.
now.
So what we're gonna do is, obviously don't shoot the wall, but we're gonna shoot through the paper. You can stand right here, just a couple yards away from the paper, and obviously you can see on either side of the paper where the bag target is. So just like you shoot normal, right down the pipe, right through the paper, and we'll go from there. So a little bit of a tear. Alright, so we did a fine adjustment on Corey's rest. Now we're going to shoot it through paper again and see if the tear gets better. I think we're going to be pretty close. Shot a little bit. We're going to shoot it again just to double check it, and we'll go from there. Alright, but to the conclusion, just so you guys all know, had minor issues with Corey's rest left to right, but spine out nice, and you can see right there and there that we got a perfect bullet hole. So now it's just sighting in and going from there. So hopefully you guys like the video. Like and subscribe, hit the bell, get notifications when I have another video, and hopefully see you guys all next time. Take care.